Okay, so we are going to get started today. At this point, we finished our refinishing process. We're all the way up to 3 coats of clear is what we've got on side of this panel specifically. We did our seal, started off at bare metal, epoxy primer, 1 coat, 3 to 5 coats of Servicer that's on that, sanded that to have a mechanical bond for our sealer, 1 coat of sealer, 3 coats of base, possibly 4 depending on how spraying technique was for each individual, and then 3 coats of clear as we just mentioned with that. So we have a decent film thickness that's on this with it. Right now where we're at, especially with you guys being first time sprayers, texture is what we're going to battle. Dirt, we will always battle throughout our entire career. Hopefully you guys learned how to be a little bit wiser as far as combating dirt. I know from our first spray to our second spray, I noticed some people taping up their stands before they went to spray on the second round. Basically our sealer Basic Clear Coat, which is great. If you did not modify and learn from that, that's going to be, you're going to have more dirt that's present inside of that. This dirt can be combated. Overall, we're pretty good with this one. We have 1 major piece inside of it, but we do have several smaller ones that are throughout that we'll take care of. For today's process, we're going to be having 1500 grit to start with initially. That's going to take down our texture, excessive texture, and take down our dirt nibs as well. Then we'll move on to 2000. 2000's real purpose is to take out 1500 grit scratches and essentially start polishing up the ladder with it. 3000 grit, going to take out 2000 grit scratches and polish further from that. At that point, we will stop and move on to buffing. I will make a special note here about how some shops may have different systems that will progress you to 5,000 and sometimes even 8,000 grit sandpaper that's there. And essentially they're taking out steps of that we're going to do polishing wise. They're taking those steps out and replacing them with sanding is what it is. So they'll end up most of the time having a 1-step sanding process that's there. So before we get started, a couple things to note will be the DA. So we are no longer with a Bodyman's DA, which will be 3/16 throw that's on this. We are now at a refinishing DA, which is 5/32 throw. So finer little circles that are throughout that. If you were to try to use a Bodyman's DA, could you sand it down? Yes. Trying to get it refined to where the curlicues, pigtails that we have that swirl in throughout there, trying to get those refined out will be near impossible all the way with it, which means you're going to have to start pushing, buffing harder and everything else. Never what we need to be doing is pushing things harder. Little 5/32 throw DA though works great. It is a Rupus, or this one here is specifically mine. This is Matco. You guys will be using Rupus. That's there with it. Okay. So a couple things is I want to make a plan before we actually start sanding. Note that I do not have on a dust mask. We are not going to be doing this dry. We are going to be doing this with the addition of water as well. So this is just basic water is all that it is. Nothing fancy to it. I need to keep both my paper and my panel continuously wet, and I need to make sure that I don't have excessive sludge that's building up inside of those areas, which can actually abrade further with my area I'm working there. Best advice I can give, and I strongly suggest giving this, if I try to just buzz across this whole panel here at first, I'm going to knock off a marginal amount, worry about burning up paper that's through there, and never really target anything specifically. What I suggest doing is actually gridding off a box. So I'm going to grid off this box that's through here. Buffing will be very similar. I'm going to get this guy completely sanded down. Then once he's confirmed that he's good, no texture, no dirt nibs or anything else like that in there, I'm moving on to this one. Once this one's confirmed, I'm moving on to this one, and I'm moving on to this one. I'm telling you from experience on educating, from experience even in industry, if you try to sand this entire panel through here, you're going to chase your tail left and right. Here's texture, here's texture, here's texture, here's texture, here's texture, here's dirt, here's that. Do it in sections and get it all and move on to the next one. So will you be the fastest one to hit 2000 grit? For sure. Yeah. I mean, you're going to zip, 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 cross through there, and then you're going to go right back down to 1500 grit because you didn't get your texture and your dirt that's out. So heed what I'm warning you right here with that. I need to be extremely cautious about hitting edges. So if I have a piece of dirt that's literally right here, I have a piece of dirt right on my edge, I'm going to have to look and say, will I break through? Is it better for me to break through in that or leave that? And I don't want that to be confused with promoting not doing a quality job, but I need us to look at it and say, based on the scenario, what do I have to work with here in this, and developing that plan that's there. So for you guys on this demo, we are going to stay away from those areas. You're actually going to see me on this particular one that I'm going to start off with. I'm going to stay roughly 1.5 inches off of the edge from my main sanding area. That doesn't mean I won't kiss up into this edge a little bit, because I still need to soften those texture that's there. If I just knock all the texture out of the middle and I leave 1.5 inches texture on the sides, I'm going to have what's a picture frame, and that's going to be extremely obvious. A picture frame essentially of texture that's all the way around while this middle is slick and happy. That's not possible there. What happens if I run my 1500 grit all the way over to the edge? Now I have to run 2000 all the way to that edge and get every 1500 grit stretch out. Now I have to run 3000 all the way over to that edge and get every stretch out. Now I have to buff stages 1, 2, and 3 on top of that edge there. For you guys on this demo being the first time, do not do that. Just soften the edges with our paper, as I'm going to show you, and then buff out accordingly with it. We'll learn more about pushing edges as we keep going with it. So I'm going to wet the pad, and then I'm going to wet the panel that's inside of this. Do not over pump these things, but if I need a pump or two, give them a pump or two. There we go. Okay, and we're going to get started. I am going to walk right up to that edge at first, so you're going to see my DA. For you guys, especially if you're new at this, try to keep the DA going forward. I still am flat with a slight rake that's to it there, so a slight raise above. Bid swoops are important on this. I have to ensure those bid swoops, or otherwise I'm going to get those same kind of cuts that are inside of that. Notice how the DA just glides across here. I want to make sure that it's doing that. If I feel it trying to move that panel, I need more water down, or I need to potentially wipe it and then add more water. You can see this kind of grayish coloring that's there. That is the sludge. We're actually removing clear coat at this point. So let's just stop where we're at there. We just kind of breezed over it right quick. But let's stop there and actually wipe it and take a look. One wipe all will go the entire distance of what you need to be here. So don't go getting greedy and using 50 wipe alls that are here. Okay, so Landon's going to get the camera and try to come up here and find it in the light to be able to see it. Let him do that first, and then let's have you guys additionally come up and try to see it too. I think you're going to be able to pick that up, Landon. So hopefully if the camera will pick it up, what you're going to see is you're still going to see texture present. You're going to see kind of a darker gray shadow that's there. That's what we're sufficiently sanded. And that texture is going to be noticed, like, looks like a basketball texture is kind of what the best way to emulate it, or describe it rather. You're going to see that kind of basketball-like texture, orange peel light texture that's there. Come up and take a look at that. Also note there is a few pieces of dirt that's inside of that. Note the different halos that they're going to have as well. Can we see that texture present? Find that light above. Yep.
Is that water distilled, or is it just tap water?
Tap water is what it is. But we're also wiping it off immediately with that there too. So the deposit of minerals is less of a concern for us on that one. And we'll end up buffing the thing initially after it too. Good question though. Okay, so can we see that texture that's present? Okay, I'm going to open it up a little bit bigger that's through here, but now that you have an idea on what you're looking at, every pass that I make, I'm using this light that's directly above me. Like right now, just looking at it where I'm at, that light is silhouetted right there. So as I move over, that light now moves over, and I keep moving over. Now that same light is right there. That's what I'm looking for while I'm sanding this. I'm not sanding blind with it. I'm actually able to see everywhere that I need to be with it. I'm going to wet the panel again. I'm also going to take and rinse any sludge that might be on my sanding paper, my pad that's there too. Notice how we have a sufficient amount of water. The panel's not trying to jerk loose or anything. What I tend to like to do is I'll just make one initial pass across everything and then start to kind of fine tune and focus once I fully wipe off from there. Note I don't want to get too close to that edge. You can see it kind of starting to dry a little bit through there. It just needs another spurts of water is all that it needs. Okay. We're going to stop and unplug. We'll wipe them again. And we'll take a look. Something that's important to mention here in this video, as well to everybody else in the crowd with it, is understanding how long that our TDS for this clear coat may call for this stuff to sit. You'll have some that call for at least 3 days to sit. Those are usually glamour style clears that are going to have the clear coat, catalyst, and a reducer that's active in it. So even after bake, it may call for 2 or 3 days that it extends out before you're actually able to buff that. This being a 2-part clear that's inside of this, we're essentially after bake. They say you can. I still don't suggest that. I usually wait the next day is what I'm doing. So a range of roughly 8 to 24 hours is what you have through that. If you wait too long, this will begin to buff a little bit harder that's inside of that. So we are actually on day 4. We had a 3-day weekend. This past weekend, we sprayed on Thursday, 3-day weekend. Here we are. I'm not noticing anything that suggests that it's sanding harder today, but it's important to note all these things from TDS on your clears and exactly what they're asking for. So go ahead and come up and take a look at it again. Remember, use that light above. And even in sometimes, like where I'm standing at right here, sits 8 feet away, I can see texture that's shining back at me. I should see a uniform kind of dull gray on this particular one. If it would be blue, it would be a uniform dull blue that's inside of that. Red would be red. But the part that I need to note here is this kind of satiny look that's here. What do we think? What do we see overall? Go ahead, Blaine, you're close. Analyze it. What do we think?
Use some more right here, it looks like.
Okay. What about on the opposing edge that's there?
You're getting the texture out pretty well from here to here.
Transitioning over.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's mentioning the very things that we need to take note of. I just talked about working these things in a square. Am I ever going to see a line that completely eliminates texture? Am I going to have just like a solid line that goes through there of no texture? I'm going to have kind of a gray area that's going to transition between the two. So as he mentioned, we're seeing it transition already into this. That's fantastic. That means that we're already walking over. Would I worry about this one specifically? I could step it over a little bit farther, or otherwise, once I move on to this square, I need to make sure that I step and bring this all together in. Does that kind of make sense how I'm saying it? The top part, though, is a little bit more concerning. I have scratches that go up to here, but I've got texture that kind of floats through here. So I probably would hit this specific area one more time just to be safe, as well as this bottom edge that's here too.
Is that like the halo you were talking about?
So he's pointing out a piece of dirt that's present there. If you want to, go ahead and feel that. Feel that nib that's right in the middle. You can feel it almost kind of like a thorn sticking out. You can feel, not pointy like a thorn, but you can feel that silhouette of that dirt that's there. With it being right there, about 3/4 of an inch from the edge, should we chase it or should we not? What do we think? What do you guys think? What's that? What is our risk versus reward here in this case? I can get the piece of dirt out. I want that flawless look that's there. What's my risk? Breaking through. Would it necessarily be with sandpaper? It could be with the buffer as well. If I get off on buffer technique or sanding technique, even for 2 or 3 swipes across with that, like 2 or 3 passes, I can bust through on that. Can I teach you progressively how to get that out? Yes. For today's demonstration, leave them alone is what I want with that, okay? I'll show you guys, and really it's a lot of you guys is just skill development on, I can effectively control this DA, I can effectively control this buffer. You're just not there yet. It's okay, we're gonna get there. But for our first demo, leave that piece of dirt out. The risk is not worth the reward that's there. Okay, 2 things I'm gonna do before we step up or step on to the next pass is going to be right here, as well as addressing this specifically down through here. If you didn't see it, you're going to see some kind of cuts that are through that. It's just where I barely touched it. I touched it maybe one time on a pass. Now I need to target that specifically and make sure that I'm smoothly transitioning that texture out, not creating a line. Okay. So rinse the pad off once again. Get that sludge that's off of there. Notice how I'm not using my rag. My rag could have who knows what that's left behind on it. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to add contaminants. I'm trying to remove them. Slight angle again on the DA. Slight. Notice the speed at which I'm going. I'm not trying to go real fast like this, and I'm not trying to go at a snail's pace either. Even is what I need here. This is where I'm going to start battling curlicues if I don't have that evenness there. Okay, so let's double check that. And then I still need to do that lower edge that is there. I'm not going to make you guys come up and see this again. I'm just going to verify to make sure that I got it all. Okay, texture's looking good on him. This will be one of the few times that I tolerate you guys having blowguns for use in here. Blowing dry that water that's there. I'm not going to have you guys just blow it with your mouth the whole time. Okay, so DA is going to walk in straight towards it through there. If you end up chasing a rogue curlicue as we go through, you need to be looking for contaminants, is usually the most common place to find that. So these pieces of dirt that are inside of this, although we're machining them flat, sometimes they are solid enough, like this guy through here would be one I'm concerned with, solid enough to stay behind and actually cause additional defects. So be very cautious if you keep constantly chasing a curlicue that's stuck. It's deeper in there than what the sandpaper should be allowing it to be. Be immensely careful for that. Okay, I'm going to let you guys come up and take a final look that is there. Notice how we're going to have a little bit more of a sanded line here than what we have here. That's because I had to go over that one a second time to confirm that stuff was out. So not really the end of the world on either technique. It's still a soft edge that's there. Just take note of it.
Is that you guys cracked from water or is that scratch?
I can't see with your light that's there.
Wow.
So take that thing out of the equation. That's nothing more than a smudgy from wiping. Bright lights usually hurt my vision more than they help me, but if I can use that dull halogen light that's above, that helps me a lot on being able to see things. So, okay, notice the soft transition of my texture that's through here. Soft transition. We're a little bit crisper on the line that's there, which isn't the end of the world. I still need to step it over. This is the same way where it needs to step over. And at this point, I'd move over to the right-hand side, and then I have the ability for this panel to be mobile now. By all means, I'm going to take and flip that panel around, and now I can work the other two squares that's there. I cannot stress it enough. Work in a grid pattern to ensure uniform sanding. If you're going to try to buzz across this whole thing, be prepared for you're going to miss this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot. It's not worth it. Just trust me on what I'm trying to tell you with this. If it's a hood, I'm going to segregate the hood in a grid pattern. If it's whatever else, the body lines I can use to my favor that's there, utilize those things to stay on track with it. So, sound good? All right, we're going to come back once we're ready for 2,000 grit. All right, so at this point, 1,500 grit has been completed, each square being its individual section that's there. Now you can see after we finished the video, student took over and started sanding excessively to the edges. He's going to regret that whenever we move along this process. Now I have to have 2,000 grit all the way to the edges, 3,000 grit all the way to the edges. I have to have wool pad for buffing, gray pad for buffing, and blue pad for buffing as well. What are the chances that I break through on those edges? High. Easily avoidable. We've seen it in the first part of the demo that's through there. Why learn lessons the hard way with it? Moving on to 2,000 though, this is probably of the three grits the most critical one. Although 1,500 we are taking out, 2,000 has the responsibility of taking out all of the curlicues, the scratches, the grit that 1,500 grit does. Now you say, well, we're only jumping 500 grit. 1,500 to 2,000 grit is capable. It is capable. Your diligence to make sure and hit the same place more than like consistently get out all the defects that are there, that's what's going to be the big pivoting factor inside of this. Can I see where 2,000 grit is? Barely. Reality, what I'm seeing is if you see kind of a chalkiness that's on this panel right now, kind of a, I'm going to call it, dare I say, a matte almost finish that's on this, we're going to see that transition into kind of a shinier matte, like a satin, if you will. And I'm going to see that shine level is really the only thing that's going to change throughout that. If you're looking for a change in overall hue of it, you may see a slight one from, you know, this kind of medium gray-ish color to maybe slightly, but really it's the gloss level that you're going to see. And it's faint. It's not like you're going from dull to glossy. It's going to transition barely. So where do I have to, how can I control this? Stay square by square in my sections that's there. Make sure and hit every part that's through that. Have a plan. Don't just start blindly sanding through there, but have an actual plan established on what my technique is going to be overall with it. We are at the point of having foam-based pads that are foam-based paper that's here. So we notice that we're just going to have a Velcro, rigid style Velcro backing on the DA, but now we've got foam cushioned sandpaper grit that's here. This is going to be 2,000 and 3,000 will also be cushioned as well. Why is this so nice? One, it keeps us from over sanding certain areas that's there, but also because it's going to hold a lot of moisture for us. So we're with 1,500 grit being kind of slick based paper, no foam based paper that's there, we constantly had to be re-wetting, you know, every 30 seconds or so, we'll call it. This is actually going to help hold moisture, which is going to work out to our benefit. I do need to get it fully lubricated at first though. So you see me go through and wet that. I'll actually kind of even push it in. On a fresh piece of paper, it might kind of resist trying to absorb it a little bit more, so be cautious to that. And I'm going to wet my square, and I'm going to go about it in the same general fashion that's there. So I'm going to focus on my edges first, and then focus to the middle, working towards the middle. Now, he took it all the way to the edge. I got to take it all the way to the edge now, too. I was already going to take 2,000 to the edge, even without this, but the problem is now I have to get 1,500 grit scratches out that went all the way to the edge. So we backed up on our original plan here, and now we're going to have to try to play catch up with it. Okay, I'm going to focus on this lower section edge through here as well, and then I'll start pulling it out. Still keeping that slight angle that's on it. I don't want to stand it up, or else if I go and stand this thing up like this, I'm doing nothing with it. If I sit it too flat, then I'm going to end up with sporadic scratching that's inside of this. I just have a slight angle is all that I have through there. Now, I've seen many of you guys on the first with 1,500 grit trying to do this. I shouldn't have to explain at this point why that's incorrect. I need to be kissing up to the edges If I'm sanding directly on the edges, all I'm going to do is take excessive material off and braid through at this point. Those are rookie moves that shouldn't be made anymore. Okay, now we're going to open it up to the bigger areas, put a little bit more water on. This thing's starting to get that water absorbed in it too. Notice how we don't have that chalkiness that builds up as much. A couple of reasons why is because that the foam pad itself, the foam piece of paper inside of there, is keeping that moisture contained to the paper where we need it at. And also 2000 is not removing off near as much material as what 1500 did. So we don't see that same sludge buildup that we've seen with 1500. Nice moderated speed that's through there. Notice how both of my hands move while operating this. Otherwise, what I've seen some of you guys end up doing was you're fine on your angle through here, but as you pull it back, I don't even know how you're really doing it, to be honest with you. You're pulling it back and you're ending up like this. So it's not like a swooping motion. It's just both hands walking with each other. Notice how much more time I'm spending with this 2000 grit paper before I'm checking. I really don't need to pull it off to re-wet like I did with 1500 once again. And I need that focus that's there. Big open spans, decent RPM, consistent on my operational speed, my movement. Okay, so uncork, set them to the side, get my rag, and let's double check now. Notice how I'm not dragging my rag out on the potentially contaminated even paper that's there. Right up to it. You notice me dragging it off the edge. I've got my panel about a fingertip width, about 1/2 inch off the edge that's there too. So I can't run any risk as I'm wiping of taking it all the way off. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and come up and see it. I might have Landon try to bring the camera around to see if we can see that color deformation, a difference that's there. Once again, I've described it as a difference in overall sheen. You can see that kind of clear color difference there just the same. So a little bit more medium, darker gray here, but it transitions to be where we've hit it with 2000 grit. We see that kind of lightening the gray up that's throughout there too.
How far do you have to go before you know it's done?
Good question. Let's go ahead and let Landon get a view of it right quick. So hopefully on the camera you can pick up a difference between this darker gray and this lighter gray that transitions across. Now we've just been working it in a square, so all we're going to see is that square. You're going to see this as a color change, but in reality it's really changing, starting to change that overall gloss level that's there. Although subtle, it's still doing it nonetheless. So you can see that clear difference. Now Brandon asked, now how do I know whenever I'm done? What am I looking for? This is where the fine tune comes in. This is where I need to get down and actually be able to analyze this panel. I'm using that light above that I can kind of look through there and really look around. In this case, you see me really putting my head to the side. I can actually see several of the lights that are above us. And what I'm doing is I'm tracing those lights around. You see me kind of move side to side with it there. And I'm looking for any type of protrusion of a scratch that's there. If I see kind of a uniform, I don't know how to describe it, fluffy type scratch that's there, consistent scratch that's there, I know my 2000 is doing its work. If I see mostly fluffy, really kind of coarser grit scratches in one area, and now I'm fluffy again with that, that's an area I need to focus on. That's where I'm going to have 1500 scratches still. Now, if I did this too fast, I really won't see anything at all. I won't be able to really look at anything and see a difference at all with it. This is where you really have to be fine-tuned. You really can't cheat this. If you try to cheat this, you're not going to get away with it, because once you get to buffing, you're going to have all types of 1500 grit curly Q scratches that are there. So I never believe in just hitting this once. I will always hit the area twice before I move on, even if right now, and honestly right now, I'd mostly confirm this to be, I'd say 95% done with it. I'm going to hit it again, and that will confirm, even if there's something I might be missing, I'm locked in with it. So let's do that right now. Once we do that, I'll let you guys come up and kind of see that, what I'm trying to describe to you. I am going to resaturate the pad again. I am going to do this. Now, my perimeter is right through here. I really have no intentions of stepping that out farther, but I am already walking it into where my net squares will be. So my net square will end up overlapping through there, which takes care of where I may not be perfect at. So if you get looking down your edges and you're like, I see some pretty coarse grit there, notice that's already part of my overlap, and I'm going to walk into it once I go to the additional squares that are there. So. Notice the big swoops. I have no reason to fine-tune sand an area anymore. That's not where I'm at. That fine-tune sanding was over on the first pass. If not else, it was over whenever I was doing 1500. I'm not focused sanding on a spot anymore. I'm just hitting it all evenly. And I'll stop here. Notice the slight angle that's there. Many of you guys are mistaking what I'm doing, trying to duplicate it and say, oh, he can go side to side. He can do that. What you're failing to understand is you're still tilted up like this and trying to go side to side. You're cutting lines inside of it at that point. One, you're not at that point yet to be able to do it. If you are, the reality is my DAs actually turn to the sides. And whenever I come back around, my DAs turn to the sides that are there too. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. You guys are just learning with it. Just get the basics figured out, and then we're going to progressively step that up from there. Once again, this foam-based paper is so nice just because it keeps the water here. This is really not that hard of a panel because it is laying flat, but whenever you have vertical panels like a door or something like that, the fact that this paper holds that water in place is really beneficial to you. Yep. Pop his top. Once again, about a ½ inch of extra hanging over there so I can cleanly wipe all the way off. Okay, and then don't get it over on the paper. I don't know what's in the paper. I can run it right along those edges and have everything that I need right there. A little bit wetter spots over here we can focus on. One wipe all should do 4 or 5 of these panels. If you're ending up where that wipe all is getting oversaturated, wring it out, and you'll have just the same absorption as what you once had with it. So if you've already went past one wipe all, you've already missed the point here, what we're doing with that. So conservative is what they are. Okay, in the same way, I'm going to start going back and forth. Nothing obvious jumps out at me, so now I can do my final time looking at it. Right now, I have the light that's about 20 feet away from me and straight up that I'm utilizing with that. Other than a little bit of fuzz right where I know that my borders are, I have no concerns that are there. So we'll finish sanding this with 2,000 grit, and then we'll move on to 3,000 grit. Okay, so at this point, we are now progressing along further. We've done 1,500 grit, which takes out our initial defects from texture to dirt to nibs to whatever else is inside of that could be there. That was 1,500 grit. We now are completed in 2000 grit, which 2000 grit's main purpose is to take out 1500 grit scratches, and it is beginning the polishing process that's there. Especially if you guys hold this thing up in a light, you start to see that sheen that we're talking about. It's not shining yet, but we are essentially polishing it out with this 3000 grit, which you're going to label here. If you look at our piece of 2000 and our piece of 3000, there's no real clear way to identify the difference with it. You could say, oh, it feels different. No. 3000 label, 2000 label is the only way to actually confirm our differences that are here. So 2000 aside, 3000 set, that is what's going to go on. Similar to how we've seen the overall shade of color difference and the overall sheen difference between 1500 and 2000, we will also see this occur between 3000 and 2000. Is that enough to run off of? Absolutely not. If you guys are putting your nose inside of this, what we're looking for is essentially uniform, consistent, I would call them fuzzy scratches, but at the same point, it is consistent scratches for 2000. What am I looking for to find those defects that may be hidden? Singular silhouettes of little curlicues that might be hidden throughout that. So it may be one, it may be a cluster of them that are there if I've jumped past certain points that are there with it. So today will be no different. We are going to start with 3000 on the end of my hose. Get him plugged in. First thing I'm going to do, I always like to just kind of take and do a little dust off with it, but then fully saturate that pad that's there. The pads will work all extremely similar to how 2000 has worked so far. Nothing that really changes there. It will absorb water better. It will hold water better throughout there. We'll just have a lighter grit of it is all. So I will go through. Whoops, that's not good. A little bit of debris on there. Okay, try that again. Now I'll wet it. And I'll begin my process again. I'm going to break it off into squares that are through there, making sure that I have enough to overlap into the next piece. And once I'm in the next piece, I overlap into it, creating consistent sand scratches all the way across through it. There's been a few of you guys, as I walk around, I am kind of noticing almost like another sort of window frame design where you've got kind of a cross design inside of that. Make sure you're overlapping further, which gets you far enough into to create consistent scratches all the way across. The other thing I'm going to note too is the fact that many of you guys are still putting a dramatic angle on top of this. This is where you guys are still seeing those cut marks that are inside of that. Almost looks like a half silhouette, a half crescent moon of where this thing would have been at with it. All you're doing is burning up paper faster and you're ruining your panel that's there with it. Keep that angle, not flat, but keep it slightly up from that to where we have direct contact and even sanding scratches that are there. Okay, I'm going to walk in and do my edges first. This is 3000 grit. It is softer than 2000 grit naturally. Make sure that it has enough time to actually work. Many of you guys are trying to just slow drag this thing and you're ending up with a series of looks like squiggly lines that go through that. That's also incorrect with it. Keep enough momentum going. I'm not skipping across at 90 miles an hour, but at the same point, I can consistently sand with that. Each time I go back and forth, I'm moving over slightly and overlapping 50% that's there. So I'm always keeping that even sand. Okay, once we get through there, now we're doing the big opens. That's going to conclude my first round with it. I'm never going to trust anything less than 2 rounds on this. The first one's going to verify where I'm at, my kind of percentage of completion, dictating where that is, and then figuring out where I need to focus, or if I just need to go across the whole thing and get that final percent finished out. Okay, couple things to notice, and this one's going to be really hard for the camera to pick up on, but you do still see a slight sheen of difference, a slight shine of difference, I dare to say. But we have this kind of being our rough overlap areas through here, and you can even see that transition from here to here and where that is different throughout that. Now, this is just the first round that's through here too. I am looking at it in the exact same way. So I can find whether it's the sunlight to be able to look across it, or whether it's just, once again, my halogen lights that are above me, and I'm going to go tracing it along. I'm looking for anything that jumps out to me as being obscure. Any types of squiggly series lines of scratches that are there. Understand that if I have those squigglies, those curly cues that are present, 3,000 may not be enough to take it out, and I may have to step back to 2,000 in order to get it to, get it out through there. So otherwise, I'm just wasting my time to try to do it with 3,000, which is essentially polishing at this point through there. So as far as completion on that square goes, I'd say we're roughly at maybe 85 to 90% that's there. So it definitely needs a second round that's with it, which we'll give it, and then be finished with the sanding process and on to the buffing process.